When we ask God, when we ask love to answer a question, it answers. When we give over a problem in our life to the source of all things, we don't have to do it twice. It's like when you throw water in the ocean, you don't have to throw it twice. We may not see the results, right? We may not see or understand how it's going to unfold in time. Saturn, right? There's like this whole time process between the truth and our living experience of it. And that's where faith comes in. Hello, everyone. In this video, I speak about Neptune stationing retrograde today and tomorrow. These are excerpts from my July month ahead, where I pretty much just focused on this Neptune stationing. As the month progresses, I will, of course, speak to all the other interesting transits. Towards the end of this video, I offer a little meditation and sort of self-inquiry practice I think it might be really helpful just to support us in dropping into the deeper healing invitation of this Neptune retrograde. It's really all about the cultivation of trust and faith along this journey, sometimes not seeing the evidence for it or not understanding its timing. All right, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Neptune stationing retrograde in this retrograde journey teaches us to show up for our lives, but to maybe see it in a different way, to understand it in a different way, to meet where we may have either kind of turned off because it's like, I can't trust you anymore. I can't trust life. I've given. Let's say it's like a relational. Like I've given, or who cares? Or my body, it has so many. I'm not gonna bother anymore. I tried making money, but it's like all these people are doing this business. It's like it's too hard and doesn't work out. Or I put so many things out there and I'm not getting any customers. Like there can be that loss of hope and meaning because we've tried. We've tried being a good person. We've made our best efforts, but it's like it still doesn't work out. You know, or like a healthcare provider, I keep on giving you advice, or a doctor, I keep on telling you got to get on a diet, and you're here for the 10th time. You know, what's the point? Why am I even going to continue to help you, right? We have these like, you can't help people that won't help. I'm not going to help you. Don't come to, right? We can get really cold and numb. And that's just the other side of the coin of like, let me sit you down and fix everything for you, right? We have that power, right? We do. We can fix people's problems temporarily. We absolutely can. Easy, right? If someone is suffering and we really want to make them feel better, we can just take it from them, right? Like, oh, I really need a massage. I just need I need to be fed. I need someone to cook me a meal. Great. I'm going to drop everything else that I'm doing with my life and, drive to your home and just give you everything you're needing. Like I can just be this instrument to serve everything that you're yearning for. We can do that. Like literally a doctor can be like, call me anytime you want. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm there for you. But of course, like I'm laughing, we know that is not really helpful. It's like this like illusion of being the savior for one another with an absolute total naive disregard of any intuitive boundaries. This leads to that exhaustion, depletion of like, I gave, and sadism is a Neptunian quality. Truly. We often don't understand that. In fact, masochism and sadism are two expressions of actually the Virgo-Pisces axis in general, and definitely within Neptune. We get the masochistic thing. It's like, sure, I'll give and I'll give and I'll give until I'm like dead. Just like whatever I need to do to alleviate your suffering, right? Lack of discrimination. And then the sadism is on the other end of that, right? Where we sort of catch up to how deeply vulnerable and unmet or unreplenished or undersourced we actually are and begin to feel deeply victimized. Okay? So the sadistic perspective within Neptune is, what about me? Like who can I call at 3 o'clock in the morning if I need help? Right? So it's like our lack of boundaries and lack of healthy discrimination and discernment in the world can easily turn around to like, I need someone to lack boundaries and be unhealthy in their own discrimination for me. Right? I'm expecting the world to just drop what it's doing and serve what I'm demanding and expecting life gives to me. And we can really find this happens. I mean, I've seen this many times. Very innocent, giving people can flip into a sort of victimized mindset through the filter, like through the lens of Neptune. So this is what we can be facing with Neptune stationing retrograde in Pisces at the very end of Pisces. It's very powerful. So now coming back to what I was saying in the beginning about Saturn, okay? I've spoken, I mean, my most recent videos about Saturn stationing retrograde, which of course, like Saturn stationing retrograde can be the loss of hope in the sort of like the dismal reality of the structural realities of our life actually being what they are, not what we hoped or imagined they could be or will be or should be. It's like what it is, right? Saturn's like functional, grounding, responsibility. Everything's going to change. Everything's going to work out. And it's not. It's like that Saturn dimension is like, you're here. This is what's going on, right? This is like your actual reality. What are you going to do about it, okay? Let's appreciate that Saturn, in its next retrograde cycle, not even this one, is going to coalesce and join Neptune and move over the exact same degrees that Neptune is moving over. Says two things. One, we're in this long-term process of immense healing and immense maturation. Immense. All this deep reflection, lots of hope, lots of meaning, meeting like the reality of our life as it is. There's a coalescence that's happening where the strength and the self-responsibility and the spiritual maturity is meeting that point of surrender and trust, where we can actually recognize that we have the ability to strengthen and create meaningful, grounded, meaningful life for ourselves here, right? There's like a gradual learning that we actually can live a greater spiritual existence here. But this is a deep process of actually meeting all of the displacements of meaning that we've been living with for a very long time. The other dimension is, this says, from a Saturn moving into Neptune point of view, we have to appreciate that we're learning something that we haven't yet learned, right? Like Saturn, you can think of it as the school. We're adolescent, we're young, we haven't learned the things that we haven't learned yet. We need to experience life. We need to fail, right? So this is like the greater institution of Neptunian learning. There's something that's going to crystallize and integrate. And I think it's very clear to say that we're in this beautiful ceremony space solidly over the next 2 years. And really next year, when Saturn is much closer to Neptune, and the nodes have moved into Pisces, Virgo, that's obviously going to be a whole new ecosystem. And then Jupiter will be squaring that too. Like there's a lot of changes happening next year. After both Saturn and Neptune station at the end of this year, direct. So we're in the beginning of this process. I would even say like this is phase one, in the larger sense. Like there are many sub-phases. Like this is phase one. Next year, once Saturn is like at the end of Pisces and they're actually meeting each other and, joining the nodes and Jupiter is there, that's phase two. And like the phase three is where like they both enter Aries and kind of go backwards and kind of coalesce back and forth between Aries and Pisces. Each of these are like its own book, really, with several chapters in them. But the entire theme of what I'm speaking to of these phases is the restructuring of the totality of our lives with respect to greater meaning and purpose, and the strengthening of our own knowledge of who we are and how we're actually in a very concrete and grounded way becoming instruments of something greater than ourselves. But it really means meeting that sense of I'm losing faith in my life. I'm losing a sense of hope, or I'm just, continuing to hope and hope and hope and hope, but like setting the stage for total burnout and exhaustion. And I think we underappreciate the extent to which we are all familiar with and overly conditioned to just assume that life means some level of bleakness and despair and like exhaustion. That reflects the extent to which we are confused about what this life is actually for. So there's this really beautiful section in A Course in Miracles that I was looking at this morning that I want to read for all of you. This section speaks to the cultivation of trust, and it's titled, Do Healings Have to Happen Twice? Like if you give a healing, if the miracle worker gives a healing, and recognizing the healing from this perspective isn't like I'm doing something to fix the appearance of your problem. Like the true healing is a return to love, where the miracle provider corrects their thinking, right? Sees the individual in their truth, in their wholeness, extends that as an extension of love to another that both the giver and the receiver share. When that happens, this passage says you don't need to repeat that. And I'll read this passage, and it actually reminds me, Michelle was visiting a church yesterday, and they were doing these baptisms. And it's like a little, because of my own conditioning, I'm like a little bit uncomfortable with like, I don't want to be proselytized, I got my own things around that. But I actually really respect and appreciate something that I heard about that. She was saying that, no, they don't do baptisms for people that already got baptized because you were already baptized. It's something like, you've already accepted Jesus kind of thing. You don't do it twice. Like once you've accepted it. And I don't know how they frame it or what their cosmology is, but I think that's the general idea. Like once you're saved, you're saved. You don't get saved twice. I mean, this reminds me of that concept, right? Looking at it in a broader sense. When we ask God, when we ask love to answer a question, it answers. When we give over a problem in our life to the source of all things, we don't have to do it twice. It's like when you throw water in the ocean, you don't have to throw it twice. We may not see the results, right? We may not see or understand how it's going to unfold in time. Saturn, right? There's like this whole time process between the truth and our living experience of it. And that's where faith comes in. And before I read this passage, actually, there was an experience many years ago where I received this healing. I even wrote a book about it. It became like this midterm essay that I wrote in college. The thesis was, what is healing? Right? And I had a certain disease. And I wanted to know, how do I heal this? Like, even if I alleviate the symptoms, I was sort of stuck in this existential angst. Like, what if I get the disease again? Like, what if, this thing happens to me again? So I saw this healer and went on this really deep journey and had these instructions. Basically, at the end of a certain day, I was told to go to sleep by a certain time and just stay asleep. And these, beings would like work on me. And I actually fell asleep and I saw them like doing this healing work on me. But it was it was hot and this car passed by and I woke up and I need to go back to sleep to receive this healing. If I don't go back to sleep, I won't receive this healing. And I struggled for hours, way past midnight. And I had to come to this place. And this was almost like the point of the entire experience in my mind. I had to come to this place of recognizing I don't know what healing means. And thus I can't place conditions around it and be afraid. I have to surrender. I just had to completely surrender. And I went back to sleep, and I actually remember meeting with these beings again. And I woke up the next morning not knowing, was this thing healed? And for the life of me, I have no ability, no clue. This was like 12 years ago, or no. What am I saying? This was like 16 or 17 years ago or something crazy like that. In my early days. But the piece that's kind of remained in me from that experience is I don't question it. And I can't explain it. I'm not concerned. And there's this knowing, if there is a medicine path to walk or something that I need on a physical level, I will know that. And there have been many moments in my life, in fact, usually when I'm not seeking it, I've received this very direct guidance, like kombu. Like I had this one dream where I was like in a store, and this Oriental lady led me towards like this broth and said, kombu broth. Kombu, what's kombu broth? I had to Google kombu broth and like, oh, kombu, seaweed. Soak it in water, you drink it. And that was recommended for me at that time, and actually still really, really good for me in general. Many examples of that. It's like what's needed is given. How often do all of us sort of circle around this like endless loop of help me, help me, help me. What do I do? What do I do? Right? But haven't we also all had the experience of answers just being given sort of in the most unexpected ways? And it's interesting because this is exactly where we struggle with our trust. We're placing these conditions and in a point of distress, sort of demanding from life to give a response. We're creating these conditions for infinity to come and meet us in our illusions. Fix this problem and tell me what to do. And I think this is where trust and faith is absolutely needed, because our trust says, I have to trust that the answer is given. One asking with absolute sincerity is enough. And if we're healing one another, one moment of unconditional love and clear seeing is absolutely enough. The rest is trust. This is like exactly the same as the law of attraction, right? Abraham Hicks teaches that idea, as I recall, something to the likes of, like, there are these different steps. And feel free to put in the comments if you know it better than myself. Like, the first is ask, right? And then, like, do nothing, right? Like, keep your vibration clear. And then receive. And then I think there's, like, then you'll have contrast. It'll elicit a new desire and a new asking. The key is not interrupting the vibration. The key is, like, I've asked, and right, and that's the issue with Neptune stationing retrograde, especially in the context of this greater Saturn dynamic, right? Like, oh, it's so hard. Let me say this too. The balsamic phase in general, like where planets are kind of completing a cycle and it's long-term because these are slow-moving bodies, itself can feel like, when's it gonna end? When's it gonna end? Right? Because it's like something's completing and we can't control it. We can't control the timing. We definitely can't control how it's looking and how it's supposed to look. We can't make these demands of life according to our own elusive idea of what it's supposed to be. So with this Saturn in the mix, it can just really feel like, when's it going to end? It's hard. It's difficult. And so the cultivation of trust says, I am not looking for a resolution or a result or a proof of the healing in my physical lived experience. You can say, well, that's just naive, right? You can just like live your life hoping and trusting in something that never happens. And there is a fundamental difference. This is the teaching, like this is the point of Neptune. There's a world of a difference between living this life of hoping and naive, like wishing and dreaming for something to change, versus asking and trusting and knowing without condition, without needing the evidence and the proof of that. The former is expecting something. The former is expecting a condition. And it's not matured. It's like when I grew up in Orthodox Judaism, there is this ongoing sort of like expectation, right? Trust that the Messiah will come. Mashiach will come. Mashiach will come. Even like all these ideas, like one day, like the third temple is going to come and replace the mosque. And like completely delusional ideas that even when I was like a child, I was like, oh, I want that, praying for that, right? Crazy, right? Wanting a whole group of people to completely lose their temple, their culture, their life, because like our savior is going to come and like it's going to be good again. And it's a completely misplaced hope. It's a very particular condition in a particular result according to how we're defining it to be, according to our interpretation. People can live in that sort of very conditional, naive trust, and it's living in a sandcastle. It's living in with your heads in the clouds. It's living with your head in the sand. And that becomes the very point from which people just lose meaning. It's like, I trusted, I believed, I'm going to lose all faith in God because nothing happened. You pray every day for the coming of Mashiach, right? Every day, and it hasn't happened yet. People have been praying for thousands of years for this. It hasn't happened yet. It must not be true, okay? Contrast that with a faith that knows it doesn't need a condition. It doesn't need a timeline. It's not looking to control the process. That's what the teaching is here with Neptune stationing retrograde, and there's an immense amount of wisdom that we can draw upon in recognizing there's a long-term process of spiritual maturation. So let me read this quote from A Course in Miracles that I think is just really beautiful to the teachings of the time right now. I'll just read a couple sections. Should healing be repeated? This question really answers itself. Healing cannot be repeated. If the patient is healed, what remains to heal him from? And if the healing is certain, as we have already said it is, what is there to repeat? For a teacher of God to remain concerned about the result of healing is to limit the healing. It is now the teacher of God himself whose mind needs to be healed. And it is this he must facilitate. He is now the patient, and he must so regard himself. He has made a mistake and must be willing to change his mind about it. He lacked the trust that makes for giving truly, and so he has not received the benefit of his gift. Let's skip to this paragraph. One of the most difficult temptations is to recognize is that to doubt a healing because of the appearance of continuing symptoms is a mistake in the form of a lack of trust. As such, it is an attack. Usually it seems to be just the opposite. It does appear unreasonable at first to be told that continued concern is attack, for it has all the appearances of love, right? We're concerned about the symptoms, so it seems like, yeah, well, that's because we care. But there's something really profound that's being spoken here. Love without trust is impossible, and doubt and trust cannot coexist. And hate must be the opposite of love, regardless of the form it takes. Doubt not the gift, and it is impossible to doubt its result. This is the certainty that that gives God's teachers the power to be miracle workers, for they have put their trust in him. It's such a powerful I mean, I can read on, but I'll just keep it there. Right, that's like that statement, like those who have faith can say, move to the mountain will move. To make this practical, to make this tangible in our life, we're not looking for flashy fireworks, right? How do we apply this? And this is where I want to do some meditative reflection with you together now. And for those that are watching, I'm going to lead us through a little process. With this Neptune stationing retrograde, there's both a quietness that we can access, meeting the problems of our life, meeting where there is sickness, meeting where there is a lack of unity, and recognizing this is the call for healing. This is the call for a return to love. And this is where we don't know the answer. This is where we don't know how to work it out. The guidance, the solutions are far greater than our limited conditional understanding. And so there's a sincerity in first recognizing, I know not what the problem is here. I know not how to solve it. I only recognize the need for healing, the need for correction. But I don't want to limit it by putting too many parameters on this. I once had this experience in Sweat Lodge where afterwards the leader said, Ari, you spoke too much. Just ask for what you want and let it go. Like, oh, that's helpful, right? Just keep it real, keep it real. And there's like a silence in the sincerity of our asking. And the second step is trust. Okay? But the third step, right, to really ground that trust in a Saturn way, this is the gem. What does it look like practically in your life to trust? Right? What does it look like to live in the faith that the miracle has been given? What does it look like to live, to act, to behave with the knowing that the healing has been given, that the resolution is here, and that we can trust it, and that we're not worried about the timing? This is powerful. This is the way out. We often entreat to God, help me, help me, help me, right? Or hoping or expecting something will change. There's this intimate, beautiful invitation to recognize that this incredible power does and wants to nurture, and take control over every part of our own lives. And the allowing it is not hard. It's apparently the most impelling natural thing in the world, right? Like, it's like you throw the water in the ocean, there's not much to do at that point. So the work for us is in where we have our own agency and responsibility to be tending to our own vibration. So there are some prompts that I put together here that I want to share with you. And we're actually going to take a little bit of a moment to just kind of give some meditative time. For those that are watching this video, I suggest you pause it right after I go through this and just take the time to kind of be with these prompts. So where is there a lack of trust? Just like you can even think about, where is Neptune stationing retrograde in your chart right now? Meeting that, meeting that. And if that's confusing, if you can't quite get your mind to that interpretation, just meet authentically. Where is there a lack of trust? And what is the prayer? What are we asking for? Right? Like, what is it we're asking for? What do we want to heal? And this part here, and this is where we'll take some time. We can journal. We can go quiet. What would it look like to accept the miracle? How would you act and be if you trusted in the resolution regardless of current symptoms? So let's take some time, maybe 5 minutes, to just be with that. I invite everyone to just connect with that prompting, and I'm going to do that as well. Something that I find in doing this process is to actually imagine myself, to actually see myself living in trust of the resolution, is an elevation of my own character. It's like this choice not to give in to certain temptations of reactivity or fear, because we only do that when we are afraid, when we don't think that things are going to be okay. So we become more contracted and controlling or defensive. I also noticed that it's really only necessary to have one moment of sincerity in asking, right? It's like one moment of absolute sincerity. It's like, when a child asks me a question and they did it in the good way, or it's like, Daddy, can I please, even if the answer is like, right now, no, you can't have dessert, but after we have dinner, you can. The only thing that will interrupt the possibility of them getting that dessert is if they keep on asking, right? Or if they become demanding of it. It was never in my heart to not give it. It just wasn't always the right timing for it. I mean, that's Saturn and Neptune right there, We have to respect like our greater parental authority and their timing, not our timing that we just don't understand. I'm not going to give it to them before they have protein. But if they keep on asking, it interrupts that natural spirit of giving. Not because I don't want to give, but it's because I can't give, right? Like that persistence and that demanding becomes a self-created obstacle to receive what wants to be given. So there's like a sort of Saturn obedience in this, and we have maybe a lot of connotations around that word. The Saturn obedience is trusting. I've asked and it will be given. It is a promise. And maybe we just need to open up to understand and appreciate the greater complexity of the timing that's beyond our knowing. Like if I promised you that I'm going to give it to you after you protein, you're going to get it. Okay. So I actually feel like this was really more than enough for today's class. I'll make some more videos on some of the other evolutionary themes of this month, and I'm actually going to make a video giving attention to Neptune through the houses, just to really work with these themes of meeting our prayer, meeting our asking, the cultivation of trust, and then living, acting, behaving. How does it look in our life to live as if the miracle is there? I think it'd be really cool to kind of unpack that and to feel into that with all of the 12 houses. Okay, so we'll end it here. A couple announcements. As always, I'm available for one-on-one sessions and also long-term soul-to-soul companionship sessions. In my classes page, I have many classes and class series, including my self-study training program for those that want to delve more deeply in the lineage of evolutionary astrology as taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green in the way that I'm teaching it and bringing it forward in my work. I'm also going to be teaching a Planet Square in the Notes class series. If you haven't already done so, you can register for my free intro class that will be at the end of this month. Lastly, the second annual Evolutionary Astrology Online Conference will be happening in October, and enrollment is open for that. I think there's like 13 or 14 talks on really cool and fascinating topics. Some new teachers coming to join us that are also really well established in their own teaching work. So I'm very excited about that conference. And that is all. Let me see if there are any questions here that I didn't. Okay, there are. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.